Hello, everyone, and welcome to Game Develop Repeat. I'm your host, Chris, and today we are talking about Tales of Maj Eyal. If you haven't played it, we're going to talk about why you might want to consider giving it a try. We're going to talk about what we can learn as far as game development goes from its world and its gameplay, and we're also going to discuss the power of iteration and repeatedly failing or trying new things for the same task. And we're going to relate that back to this game. Let's dive straight into it. Let's talk about who I think is going to enjoy this game. I think it's worth trying to convince you, even if you initially think that you're not going to be into it, that it might be for you. Because when I first played this, I thought that it was not going to be for me. I was not interested. I was like, whatever. I literally played it because I had nothing else to play at a time when I wasn't willing to go out and do something else. Like I was tired from the day. I only had access to this one game because I was traveling and it was on the laptop and all that stuff. Uh, and I gave it a try and I really liked it. And then when I got home from traveling, I played it a lot. It's one of the very few games that I played through the night. I remember starting it late in the day and going, I'll just do a couple runs. And then repeatedly saying, oh, I'll just do one more run. And then I got into one run where I was like, oh, well, I'll die any moment, so I'll just keep playing. And then the sun came up. And I was like, oh, all right, I need to pay more attention to my time when I'm playing this game. Like, it was definitely that thing where you look at your clock and it's 3, and then you look at your clock and it's like 6, right? It was rough. But it was very enjoyable. It's a very good game. There's a nice variety of classes and races and specialties and skill choices and all of this stuff. There's great variety in the character building. If you're a fan of like a Dungeons and Dragons tabletop style game, this is probably for you. If you're a fan of a series like Lord of the Rings with a lot of world building and a lot of lore to dig into, this is also probably for you. This world has a lot of lore. If you like unlockables, if you're really big on like finding stuff out on each run and unlocking them and then having consistent discoveries that kind of carry through a little bit, then this is for you. You unlock new classes as you're going, you unlock all these things, right? It is compelling. And here I'm going to give you the reason why you might look at it and you might go, "Yeah, I don't want to try that. I'm okay." It's not the most visually appealing game, all right? It is definitely not ASCII art. It is extremely readable. But if you're used to playing AAA titles, if you're used to playing very, very polished indies, yeah, if you're used to playing like Celeste and like a lot of the other games I've discussed on here, if you're used to playing like AAA, old AAA, and like solid recent indie stuff, you're gonna open up this game and you're gonna go, "Oh wow, that's an interesting aesthetic. That's not what I'm used to. I'm gonna pass." And you would be missing out a lot. Also, the visuals have been updated to some extent since I last played. Um, well worth a shot. Let me talk about how the gameplay itself is structured, how the movement works, all that stuff, right? All the nitty gritty for a second here. It is a turn-based, tile-based movement system. What I mean by that is it's kind of like original Diablo. You move, time passes. You're not moving, time's not passing. Everybody's got their own speed and all that stuff. So maybe you move 1 tile, somebody else moves like 5. Maybe you move 12 tiles, somebody else moves 1. It depends on how fast you are and what abilities you're using and all that stuff. but time only passes when you are taking actions or moving, which is nice. Um, it's surprisingly tactical. In fact, it's quite tactical. There's a lot of thought going into things. There are a lot of moments where, like, if you make the wrong move, you're just dead. You really got to pay attention when you're fighting things. There's a lot of exploration involved, and I strongly recommend when you're first getting into it, learning to use, not even learning to, you can just kind of use it, using the auto explore button. There's a button that makes your character zip around the map very quickly and keep moving through everything until they see something of interest, and then they stop, and then you can deal with whatever that interesting thing is, whether that be an enemy or a chest or a trap or whatever. It's very handy. It made the game go so much quicker for me. It helped me, like, iterate through characters much faster. Uh yeah. There's a lot of power in that button. Strongly recommend. I also like reading the lore in the game. You will find a lot of little documents that are written in a nice, interesting, like, often kind of a jovial or like humorous way. So there's a lot of like world building, and then there's a lot of comedy tucked inside of that. And it's like nice low key comedy. Sometimes I'll play a game that's like trying to be funny, and you can just feel that they're trying to be funny. It's not really like, it's just like got a nice little comedic touch to it, just a little hint of comedy. It's not too over the top for me, for my tastes. I have specific tastes in comedy. That's very individual, I suppose, but it works well for me. The game is, on the whole, just worth a shot. You can play the game for free. There are a couple features that you unlock by paying, but they're things that like a lot of roguelike players don't really care about anyway. It's things like item carryover from run to run, like that sort of thing. Um, so you can play for free if you just download the game from the website, which is te4.org. That's TE and then the number 4.org. I'll try and remember to leave a link in the bottom of this episode as well to help you out with that. Uh, let's move on to talking about what we can learn from playing this game. So, what are the things that we can learn about game development from playing Tales of Maj Eyal? I would say the first thing that stands out to me is world building. This game gives you so many things to explore that you will guaranteed not explore all of them in one run. I think there's a lot of value in that, depending on your genre. But one of the secrets of world building, I think I picked this up from a talk given by the guy who made Stanley Parable. One of the secrets of world building seems to be put things in that nobody's gonna notice. Like, put stuff in and don't make people see it. Just tuck it away. And if somebody notices it, they notice it. It makes the world feel so much more alive. It makes it feel like there's something around every corner. I remember a moment when I was playing Elder Scrolls Morrowind where I looked into a tree stump and I found a dagger. And I was like, whoa, are you kidding? There's just daggers in tree stumps? I gotta check all the tree stumps now. That may have been the only one in the entire game, but that really pulled me into the world. I was like, somebody hid this here. Somebody put this here. And there, you know what? There wasn't really much about that. I don't remember whether or not that tied into this one quest or not. Um, but stuff like that, these little details that are like just very charming and make everything feel alive. Let the player miss things. Let there be something that not every player is going to see. Let there be so much stuff that no player is going to catch all of it, at least not initially, right? Um, Nobody has to experience 100% of your game. I think it's good to set it up to where you're not pushing your player into every single thing that happens in the entire game. It's great to have Easter eggs. It's great to have things that fill out the world that just like even if they don't see it directly, they might just kind of feel its presence in the background. Like all those books you see in the Skyrim games, like nobody has read every single one of those books except what is it? Brian David Gilbert did a video where he read like all the books in Skyrim. What a what a man, what a journey to go on. Um yeah, putting this kind of world building effort in, that's pretty great. That's that's a good way to fill out your world if this is the kind of game you're making and if that's the kind of thing you want to do, right? Um, I think more broadly speaking, there are a lot of ways to add detail to the world visually. There's a lot of stuff you can do that doesn't involve writing novels within your game, right? East Shade, which I've talked about before, does a lot of its world building visually. Everything is very beautiful. There are lots and lots of approaches to this. I don't know all of them, but my feeling is that you can just give people a little extra room to explore and make sure they don't miss out too much by not exploring. Like, don't make the exploration mandatory. Give them the choice. If they want to spend more time in the world, great, they can. If they want to learn more about necromancers in Tales of Maj Eyal, which I do, I always do. I always want to know more about necromancers. If you want to learn more about that, you can read all the little things about it. If you want to learn more about like the history of the dwarves, cool, read more about it. Um, if not, skip it. Keep playing. Keep smashing enemies. Do all that good stuff, right? And then have stakes to the choices that you make. So this is a different topic. We're off of the world building now. The choices that you make, for me, need to feel impactful. There have been times when I play a game and they make respecking my class too easy and it ruins the fun for me. Maybe this is a me problem, but sometimes the convenience of an easy respec makes me feel less invested in the character. I want like a little bit of effort on the respec, right? Because otherwise, it feels like I don't have a character. It feels like I just have this amorphous blob of skills that I can push in any direction I want, which is okay, I guess. But I like some level of permanence. And there is an argument for like, well, you've got to respect the player's time, and I agree with that. I think that's very important. And Tales of Maj Eyal manages to respect the player's time by making everything very impermanent, which is kind of cool. Like you're it sounds like I'm contradicting myself, so let me clarify. Your character's skills that they've chosen, those are quite permanent, right? It doesn't really feel there's a little bit of respecking. You can respec the last few skills you've done as long as you're in town, like up to like 3 to 5, I forget how many, but you can do a bit of respecking for free. But you can't just go back and wipe your whole skill tree, right? So it feels much more permanent. Once you get to a certain point, those skills are more or less locked in. And then uh once they're locked in, you're not really that worried about it because your character is gonna die. Like you're not making it to the end. Come on. If you've made mistakes, there's consequences. You're dying. And then you're gonna have to restart and you're gonna go, okay, well now I know. Now I know how to do this. I'm gonna do it this way instead. That is we're gonna get into this more, talking about iteration and like the power of failing and stuff. That's actually gonna be a big part of like this week's tip is iterate. Um, but that's a big, powerful part of this game and a big part of I think the roguelike genre in general is like when you fail, you just restart and learn the lesson. Like you, the player, learn the lesson. I love that. I think that's so valuable. I think that's one of the biggest strengths of this genre is that the player has to learn things and develop skills instead of the character developing strength and stuff, which is still really great. That also is a very powerful gameplay mechanic, and I do like it. But there is a power in very permanent character development and having stakes and having characters that actually die and having you have to re-roll the character and restart it and go, okay, I made mistakes last time. I messed up. I have to redo this. It's on me. Here's what I've learned. Here's what I'm going to do about it. That's marvelous. And I think that's one of my favorite gameplay elements. Game design features, maybe I should say. One of the best underlying game design tricks of this game and of this genre is stakes for the player that don't feel terrible despite the fact that you're losing a character. Like the extent to which it feels bad is good. The level of regret over the death of your character just rolls straight into, well, now I know how to do it better next time. There are very few times where I'm playing a game like this and I go, man, I died and I'm sick of it, right? There are games that do that to me. I don't know why, but survival games do that to me. I think when I'm really, really working on building a base and trying to survive and all this stuff, there's a point there where I go, oh, and now I just have to go through the grind again. Like I didn't learn anything really. I had like, how do I put this? If I don't learn something that I can immediately apply on restarting, it's more upsetting to me. If I learn stuff where once I restart, I just kind of go, "Oh, okay. I'll just build it differently." And I know that from the beginning, that's great. If I just learned, "Oh, don't walk up to that thing, it'll kill you." Like, well, I'm not going to encounter that thing for like 25 minutes to well, for survival games, it's like I'm not going to encounter that thing for like 3 days, right? It can be a lot. Anyway, that's a little bit of a tangent on that one, but it does seem to drive you towards Tales of Maj Eyal, I should say, does seem to drive you towards learning about the game on each run. There are, of course, times where you die and you're like, I don't know what happened. That was really crazy powerful. And then you can look at the details and get into the analytical side of things and whatever. Um, and then you can figure out what your weakness of your build was and all that good stuff. If I'm honest, I tend to not do that. I tend to explore the world and try different classes and just kind of have fun with all this stuff. And I don't tend to dig deep into building the characters correctly because I like just exploring stuff and I enjoy uh, the process of just trying things without as much analysis in terms of this game's gameplay, right? One last point about this game has to do with scope and where you're allocating your effort in terms of your game design and your programming. I think that this game benefits massively from not being too focused on having like a high fidelity art style. It's the same concept you see with like Dwarf Fortress, where they go, okay, let's basically ignore art entirely and focus purely on gameplay and the interactions between things within the world and all that stuff. I think there is a lot of power in chilling out about certain elements of your game so that you can focus on other elements if you really know where your strengths lie. And I think that Tales of Maj Eyal is a beautiful example of knowing where your strengths lie and focusing on those strengths. For the record, I do like the art style now. When I first looked at the game, for some reason I was not feeling it. Now I'm like, yeah, this is great. Like I think about that visual style and it makes me want to play the game. Um, Obviously, when I first tried to play it, I was not feeling it. I think it just did not grab me initially because it wasn't what I was used to. But man, is it worth playing? If that art style puts you off a little bit, I recommend pushing past that and just giving it a shot. If that's the only thing holding you back from trying the game, you can play it for free. Just give it a go, right? That's another smart move is letting people play it for free. That'll let people give something a try that they wouldn't normally give a try. Very smart. All right, let's move forward here and uh you know what? We're actually going to talk about my own game development this past week. So this week, the biggest thing I did in my development was actually just integrate some animations into the game. I didn't have like one of those crazy weeks where you're doing like this whole new skill and really diving deep and doing all this interesting stuff. I just did a few new enemy death animations and put them into the game. And then I updated my professional portfolio and put the game. Okay, so I put a build of the game on itch purely for the sake of being able to host it and show it off for my professional portfolio. It is not yet something that I am showing to the public because the build is, it's not like public ready. It is, hey, look, I'm showing off some technical skills ready, but it's definitely not something that I feel like putting out there in terms of like, hey, look, this is a demo for you to play, have fun. Like there's a big old disclaimer that's like, this is very much a work in progress. The build that I put up doesn't even have the sprite for like exiting the level. It just has a yellow box instead of like a door. I did add that this week too. I added that after I put the build up. I was like, okay, I need some kind of doorway because this is like one of the roughest looking things in the build right now. Like it is not a good look. This does have me thinking a little bit about my development cycle. I know there are a lot of people who are fans of doing a vertical slice pretty early on, and I'm starting to see why. I think that makes a lot of sense because the next phase of my development that I'm looking at right now is doing a lot of the sound design, right? And I'm looking at this and I'm going, oh, I'm gonna have to line up these things, and there's just a lot of details to it, and that's fine. Um, and there's just, what am I getting at here? What I'm getting at is there are a lot of tasks within game development that are very unexpected. And if you do a vertical slice, you find all of the unexpected tasks, and then you go, okay, now I've done this once. Now I know how to do it. Now I can see how long it's going to take for me to do it X number of times. How approachable is this? And I do think looking at where I'm at, the rest of my project is still pretty approachable, but it's a little annoying not knowing exactly how long my sound integration is going to take me. It's a little annoying not knowing how long all these little details are going to be. And I do like the idea of having a chunk of gameplay that's just, hey, here's the game. Here's here's 30 seconds of the game, fully fleshed out mechanics, everything, right? And then having a vague, like a sketched out outline of everything. Like I'm kind of visualizing this as a black and white pencil sketch across an entire table, and then just like one line of it is completely colored in. Um, I'm I'm seeing the value in that now. I think I think I've been seeing the value in it. Um, and I just haven't pivoted to that style because I was already down this other road of this other way of development. I gotta say, making my first solo project has been such a huge learning process in terms of like, there are so many things I didn't think I was going to learn that I'm learning. There's so much about efficient management of your own project. Like I look back and I go, wow, I really wasted time by tackling this challenge too early on, or by not tackling this challenge early enough. There are things where I go, oh, well, if I had known that I was going to do this system, then I would have never done that and I would have saved this much time. Obviously, some of that is just looking at things in retrospect, but some of that is avoidable. I think there are things that you can do to prevent having too many of those things where you're looping through the same task over and over. Anyway, so yeah, this week of programming, or this week of game development was very, it was animation heavy. I'm expecting next week to be very sound design heavy and integrating sound design. There honestly wasn't that much coding this week. I think it was mostly just getting the animations to trigger at the right time, which is like pretty straightforward, right? Compared to like compared to designing your player controller and compared to like all these other features. Um, is there anything else to say about it? So I will. All right, I guess I should address this. I at the moment I'm not making the demo thing publicly available. I might post it on the Discord, maybe. I want to update the build a little bit before I like start showing it a little more publicly. At the moment, it's literally just there so that I can host it on my website as something that people can check out for professional purposes, right? Or if I want to link it to a friend. Um, Once I have a couple more sounds in and maybe some music, I think that's probably when I'll start like really sharing it. Although at that point, it's gonna be so close to done. We need to, I need to look into marketing. I that is, I think I probably should have been sharing images of this game like months ago, right? Like I think, hmm, yeah, I think I need to look into marketing more. I think I've been so focused on learning the programming side of things and the animation and all this stuff. And you got to learn so many skills. Like you can't do everything at once, but marketing seems like a big one to dig deeper on for sure. All right. Well, that wraps up talking about my own game development. Let's move on to this week's tip for sustainability. This week's tip is to iterate. I know that seems a bit obvious, a bit straightforward, perhaps, but if you repeatedly approach the same problem from different angles and do so rapidly, you're going to learn a lot. I think if you keep okay, let's tie this back to Tales of Maj Eyal. In much the same way that every time you die in a roguelike, you learn something. Every time that you fail to accomplish a task, you learn something. Do you go back and do exactly the same build? Probably not, you know? I mean, unless you know that you did some like very obvious like technical failure, like you're like, "Oh, I zoned out and I did this thing instead of this." But even then you can be like, "Okay, well, what can I build in here to make sure that if I zone out, I don't make that same mistake," right? In the same way, when you're working on a project or on a more meta level, because this is kind of the angle I like to take this from, look at your own processes and see how you can iterate on those. So, like, look at your game development cycle and see what you're doing and say, what other cycles can we try? What other techniques can we do to find the optimal way for me to work? What points in my cycle are sticking points? What points hold me back, right? Where do we run into problems and how can we navigate those problems? And it's not, this is the most important part of this tip. It's not a matter of thinking your way out of the hole. It's a matter of testing your way out of the hole. And this can be a problem with something that's like a longer cycle, right? Finding a way to test an entire game development cycle, it's a little bit, it's a lot of investment. See if you can turn it into a small scale thing. Whatever it is that you're having trouble with systems wise, see if you can test that system on a small scale and iterate through different versions of it and find the one that works for you. This is maybe the joy of game jams, and that now I'm feeling like this is something I should do more of, is these game jams. I really haven't dug deep into that. I think I've did one game jam a long time ago, and I was just the audio guy at that time. That was before I learned anything about programming. This was like years ago. Um, yeah, so big fan of iterating, and I don't. I really have to draw that distinction for myself because I think that's a very important lesson for me to learn is it's not about thinking through different ways to try a thing. It's not about, oh, I could try it this way, I could try it this way, I could try it this way, I could try it this way. It's try it this way, try it this way, try it this way, try it this way. It's actually attempting all of those different changes. For that reason, this was like, I think I mentioned this last week, but I've sketched out a new game dev cycle for me to try. I've sketched out a way for me to try to make my next game that is like pretty rapid and pretty clearly mapped out, so I can give it an attempt, see where it fails, and find those points of failure and really like pinpoint what is working and what is not. That's one of the reasons I was talking about vertical slices. That's one of the reasons I like the idea of a vertical slice. I think it's probably pretty useful, and I have to actually try it. But it's probably pretty useful for targeting points of failure within your game design and then reiterating on it, going, oh, that vertical slice, it's not quite right, let me just reset this and like change it, because you can get a full snapshot of the game and edit it from that perspective rather than just taking it on faith that the game is going to be good once it's complete, which is I think a little dangerous with the amount of time investment that we put into developing a game, even a short one. um that is everything that I have for you today. That's the end of the episode. I will see you all next week. I think I'm probably going to cover. Um, you know what? I shouldn't even say that because I'm going to post this. What if I post these out of order? This should be posted before the other one. I'm probably going to cover that new game, Dredge, because it's so cool. It's like a horror Lovecraftian fishing game. I haven't finished it yet, so I'm holding off on covering it, but maybe next time. It might be a couple weeks out. I'm totally covering it at some point because I love it. It's worth looking into. If I mean, it's just worth looking into. But I'll get into that whenever I do that episode. Thanks for sticking around. That's the end of the episode. I will see you all next week. Have a good time, create some cool stuff, and have fun with it. See ya.